even if we did have primarily EVs on the road, I don't think it's the kiss of death for car culture in the traditional sense. Welcome back, I'm Tedward, and today I want to talk about how the future of car culture seems pretty grim. We can tell that it's grim because the classic car market is going absolutely crazy. Anything with an analog experience, whether it's an air-cooled 911 or a manual, naturally aspirated BMW like an E46 M3 or an E39 M5, are going for crazy money. We just saw an E39 sell for $200,000. Yeah, that's outrageous, and I am certainly not going to be in that party. But is there a future for car enthusiasts who enjoy engines, who enjoy burning petrol, and can we fit into a world that's just full of electric vehicles? Is that something we want to be a part of? So let's go for a ride in, I think, the perfect car for the job, my 1988 3.2 911 Carrera. But first, this video is sponsored by POV, and this is quite an apt application because while yes, my 911 is very much an enthusiast vehicle, it's so much of an enthusiast vehicle that it does not have a radio, and so this POV K179S split speaker allows me to actually throw on the Bluetooth, put it back here on either side of the seats, and boom, I have everything I need to take a long journey with a little music. It lasts up to 7 hours, so chances are I am not dwindling this battery on a drive. And it also has a built-in microphone, so I can use it to make hands-free phone calls from the 911, and its powerful subwoofer allows it to overcome the raucous noise from my flat 6. But better yet, this POV split speaker has actually replaced my computer speakers, and now it sits at my desk most days. The friendly folks over at POV are giving you 65% off the 179S split speaker if you check the link below. Use code TDSOUND. All right, let's go out and take a drive. Oil pressure's coming up, very nice. Oil level looking good as well. We're not totally warmed up though, so that is basically meaningless until you're at idle and fully warm, but if it's not at zero, at least makes you feel pretty confident. All right, so first things first is it always feels as though people want to blame electrics, EVs, for ruining car culture. They're like, oh, well, all these car companies are going electric, that must be the enemy. And we saw that when hybrids were happening as well, because I always felt like there was this sort of unjust hatred toward Priuses. I get it if a Prius is going slow in front of you. Like maybe you don't like the driving style of the owners. But if someone who doesn't really care about driving wants to save some fuel, doesn't that just mean there's more fuel left for you? Doesn't that just mean that there's like less emissions to regulate, so that way the people who actually care about the enthusiast cars can use them more freely? I know that's not exactly how it works and that regulations don't work that way, but intrinsically that's how I always felt, that if more people were using less fuel, then I could be a little more guilt-free about driving the cars that I enjoyed driving and use more fuel. Fair enough? There's finite resources out there, right? But a lot of automakers are definitely coming out and saying we're done with the internal combustion engine by like 2020 whatever or 2035, and we're even having American states come through and say like we're gonna ban sales of internal combustion engines by a certain year, and that it feels awfully close. So there's a couple things that I just don't buy here. First of all, a lot of things have to go very right building an EV infrastructure to allow for these like very lofty goals of being fully electric in like 2030 or 2035. Now, I'm not saying it can't be done, but I wouldn't put my money on that. I don't think we're at that level then where people can, that guy's totally enjoying his day. Yeah, do wheelies on your bike, save fuel, that's great, leave it for me. But right now, we're just nowhere near a point where you could say, yeah, well, you know, shut every gas station down and see what happens. It would not go well. And I don't know that our infrastructure is prepared to do that even in 10 or 15 years. So it would be a miracle. Like, we don't even have trains in the United States. Guys, think about this. We barely have trains in the United States. You have to fly everywhere because you, like, can't take a train. And then they want to say that they want to go full EV. Okay, sure, whatever you want to do. But more importantly, even if that did happen, even if we did have primarily EVs on the road, I don't think it's the kiss of death for car culture in the traditional sense. And I say this because car culture is already pretty dead. I mean, most cars on the road are like very, very boring. Everyone drives 2-3 row SUVs. Like, we're looking at this school parking lot right now. everything is like the most boring non-enthusiast vehicle ever. There's Mercedes in there, and they're, just no offense to the GLC or whatever, but like most of these cars are very boring. For the most part, people are not enthusiasts right now. We are already a relatively niche and small group, and we gather as such. We notice that we're a niche and small group because every time we have a car show, it gets broken up by the police, even if nothing happens. If anything, we don't have to be such an us versus them thing. I see so many people like really anti-EV. Like, I like EVs. It's nice to drive an electric car. It's very relaxing. It's a departure from the norm, and that's kind of fun. Isn't that kind of fun? But I get it, because if you look at it as the encroaching thing you need to defend against, then that creates the divide. That's where that wedge comes in, and suddenly people become like political about the powertrains of their vehicles. But let's take a look at current culture with events like Radwood. I think Radwood is going to become sort of the norm of car culture in the future, where not only are we really, really enthusiastic about our vehicles, but we're going to be like period correct about it. The way horse people get up in their big tall boots and their funky outfits and their long flowy capes and things like that, we're going to be all dressing in like period correct clothes. You're going to see like outlaw meets, and everyone's going to be acting like Magnus Walker. They're going to come with their dreadlocks, or they'll have like hats with dreadlocks or something. You know what I mean? I think it'll be a little more fun, and we already see this at like Pebble Beach. If you go to like concourse events and you see like really old vehicles, or Goodwood Revival, right? You will see people in very old vehicles dressing the part. And maybe that's where car culture goes on a broader scale, and we kind of all just rally around the things that we really like. We pick our tribe, whether it's JDM or German or American Muscle and all this stuff, and maybe that's how we end up really keeping it alive. And honestly, it might even be stronger and more obsessive than it ever was. That's kind of a frightening thing to think about. But I very much doubt that ICE will be just completely banned and you won't be able to go and enjoy your cars on like a mountain road. I don't see that happening. The problem, though, I do see happening is if fuel becomes a little more scarce, is like, where are those gas stations? And we'll get a little more clever about how we fuel our vehicles and how we carry excess fuel when we're going from stop to stop. Let's say if everything's just tailored for EVs, you might not have gas stations as frequently as you did before. But the reality is there's so much money wrapped up in internal combustion engines that even if in 15 years, 2035, like I've heard some pretty lofty goals about banning internal combustion production. That doesn't mean that it all just goes away. And while in my lifetime, in the later half, maybe I will see a really marked change in the way this works, I don't think I'm going to have to hang up the keys and just like crush my 911 because I can't drive it anymore. One of the things that I never really understand is how polarizing things get when it comes to things like cars and EVs versus ICE, because I don't really see them as a this or that future. I see it as like, what an amazing option. And I know that regulations aren't going to go that way, but for most circumstances, like charging a car in your garage or in your driveway and then driving it to work with essentially no emissions is pretty sweet, especially if you got some solar panels on the roof and you're doing it all for free. That's nice. I don't always want to be driving some like finicky race car or some outrageous 8,000 RPM engine when I'm driving to work. Sometimes I want to save those miles for the track days or for fun drives. But the alternative too is that I am a human being with biological features. I have lungs. I have to breathe the air. And it always baffles me when people are very like anti-pollution. Is that the way to say that? Like, I don't want to breathe polluted air. So like if most people, everyone who's out there driving a RAV4 or a Prius or whatever, like starts just driving straight up EVs, doesn't that mean that I get to breathe cleaner air and also feel less guilty about my M5 and my M3 and my 911? Like that sounds pretty okay to me. Like we always have these memes of some dude like rolling coal against a Prius, and I just, that doesn't add up to me. As if you're telling him like, hey, you should do this too. Like, well, no, because if he does it too, then he's doing it to you, and then you also can't breathe. Like, that's not a good scenario. And like like, of course, I'm nostalgic and I enjoy the smell of uncatalytically converted fuel. It smells great when you go to a classic car show and the hot rods show up. Like, it brings you to a place, right? But it is also extremely toxic. It's not great for your actual health. Ooh, this is a nice little stretch of road. God, we need money for infrastructure. There's so many holes everywhere. This is what I mean. They can't even keep the potholes off the roads, and they want me to believe that they're going to go full electric with like major OEMs that barely have battery technology. Like, dude, it's just, okay. But something that I think just really rings true is that enthusiasts don't die. Like, yes, the horse went away, but we still have lots of horse enthusiasts, and there's tons of money in events for those people. There's always been disruptions in the automotive industry, especially when it comes to emissions. I mean, look at the gas crisis in the 1970s. Cars got really lame. We had big regulations come in and completely neuter all the monster hot rod V8s that we were running, and that everybody was driving these cars. That wasn't even an enthusiast thing. But what happened then? I mean, it kind of took a while, actually. I think like legitimate enthusiast vehicles in America, at least, kind of waited until the late 80s and early 90s, and then we got stuff like this and, you know, cool 90s cars. But the love of cars never went away. It just evolved. And I think that's what we're doing right now. We're in these sort of uncertain times where, like, it appears that electrics are going to be the future, and that makes a lot of sense. Things are happening. The real fear needs to be in the fact that there's, like, nobody who really likes cars, not in the fact that they're going to, like, make us all drive Teslas. The market, it seems, does seem quite fearful that all of these fun things are going to die. Oh, sorry, I should have let you cross. My bad. I'll give you lots of room so you can start. Okay, but we look at used cars, especially like classic cars, and by classic, it's weird to say classic cars because like now this includes things from the 90s, which like don't really feel that classic to me, but I guess they are. I'm old. But enthusiasts now are valuing analog experiences very highly, and we're seeing that with like E46 M3 prices, E39 M5 prices, classic 911s, air-cooled 911s like this. It's really wild what people are willing to pay for these cars, because not so long ago, I thought these were pretty expensive at like 40 grand. Now you're seeing them go for like 80. And these are impact bumper 911s, the most unloved. And it's only a matter of time before like a normal 996 Carrera is $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 instead of the $13,000 ugly fried egg headlight nightmare that you never wanted to begin with. I also don't really see that as a direct result of like times they are a-changing because the internal combustion engine is going away. I see that as because like we basically don't have enthusiast analog vehicles at all anyway. Even without electric vehicles at all on the table, let's pretend that's never gonna happen. Everything is numb. Everything is like turbocharged. Everything is so filtered through computers and programming that to get a sensation, I'm so sorry for these roads, this is atrocious, that people are just missing out on what it is to drive. And I'm hoping, I really hope that the cultural change that comes with all of this is that people start to appreciate feeling a car again and stop chasing power numbers. Like, everything today is really fast. Like, every car is really fast. And I'm sure I'm going to get the comment, like I get comments on the GT500, which has 760 horsepower, and they still say, this is slow, you should drive a twin turbo Viper ACR. Well, yeah, it doesn't mean the Mustang is slow, but like, in general, new cars are very fast, and unfortunately, like, EVs are going to make that even worse, because now everyone suddenly has instant torque and the ability to do 0 to 60s in under 3 seconds. Like, that's not something we should unleash to the public. That's so stupid. But maybe that means that the true enthusiasts will be driving somewhat normal, I guess relatively slow cars in the future. But if anything, maybe I'm a bit too optimistic, but I think that the car community will become even more tight-knit, and we'll have really good resources for each other to maintain the things that we love the most. So, thank you so much for watching, liking, commenting, and subscribing. Special thanks to the Patreon supporters for making the content possible. Don't forget to respect the drive, and please, like, let me know what you think about all of this. I mean, it's a touchy subject, and you know, I don't always like to talk about it just because maybe I have like a lighter view of what's going on. I know a lot of people are very angry, so let me know what you think in the comments. Either way, I'm here for you. I'll see you in the next one.